guys, and welcome to the season premiere of Spoken Truth. I'm your host, Danny.
I'm Chaz.
Tone.
And today we're going to be talking about the jam-packed Western Conference. A lot of these teams are far apart from each other. But we're going to start with the reigning defending champions, Golden State Warriors, who are 18-18 on the season. They have the best home record and the worst road record in the league. Chaz, what are your initial thoughts on this Golden State team right now?
Well, the team that we're watching right now that I believe has won their last couple is obviously a different team than what we saw last year win the championship and, who we expect to see soon when Steph Curry returns from his shoulder injury. They're starting to play a little bit better ball recently, like you said, just terrible on the road, 3-16, I believe. They lost like their first 8 or 9, I think it was. We're used to them being great at home, just not as bad as they have been on the road. I think a lot of it early in the season was just defensive struggles. I think they've started to turn the corner a little bit on that, as well as some rotation issues. So I think they're just kind of getting back into the swing of things. If they can really start to play better when Steph Curry gets back, then I think that will be key to them improving their seeding.
Sunday?
I think from my perspective, I propose that the Dubs, what they should be doing is hiring. I don't know if you put this on Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever, but advertise a position, just like official team baddie, or like an official group of team baddies. Throw them in the front row of every game and let Jordan Poole cook. They're probably going a long way. And in all seriousness, the Warriors have issues with buddy. Obviously you guys have alluded to the home and away splits. Like, why are they so much worse away from Chase Center? I think we're still kind of I think we're all still kind of trying to figure that out ourselves. From a defensive perspective, though, basically everyone in the rotation has taken a step back on defense. I think for me, the stunning thing is just watching their games and watching just how often guys get beat off of straight line drives. It's just way too easy for guys to get 2 feet in the paint, and that's going to kill any defense at any level. Aside from that, Klay Thompson has taken a pretty big step back. Unfortunately, you really hate to see it, but you guys heard me say this last year that long term the Warriors were gonna have to choose between 3 of Draymond, Klay, Jordan Poole, and Andrew Wiggins, and you guys also heard me say last year that if I was choosing, that Klay would have been the odd man out. Funnily enough, Draymond couldn't keep his hands to himself in the offseason, so now he might be the odd man out. But from a pure basketball perspective, it makes me really sad, especially given how much Klay Thompson means to that organization and to the Bay Area and all of that. But I don't know how much longer Klay Thompson is going to have with the Warriors.
I think both of you make valid points when it comes to this team. They have a lot of mishaps on the defensive end. And one of the things that goes unnoticed or is underrated is when this team was winning back-to-back championships, they were number 1 in offense, but their defense was always top 5. So they always had a stellar defense. And I'm seeing this team give up transition layups, not even contest open threes, and just the paint is wide open. I don't know what type of scheme Steve Kerr is running, but it obviously isn't working right now. But it has to be something. It has to be a bigger factor of why this team, it's such a big difference between home and away. Is winning a title, is that still hanging over this team? Or is it just the situation that happened in the offseason when Jordan Poole and Draymond? Is it that this team, Klay Thompson, he can't be that second? Well, Klay Thompson has been the second best player on the Warriors for going on a year now, and that's been Andrew Wiggins. So is it that this team is it losing the grip that I know the lead is catching up, but exactly why is this team performing so bad on the road versus at home? And can this team still win a championship presently constructed?
I think all the things you mentioned, Danny, are valid, and probably have something to do with the struggles from this year. Who knows what's going on internally? Obviously, Draymond blowing Jordan Poole shit in can't help none of this. It's hard to win multiple like championships year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
They're also like really missing guys like Gary Payton. But yeah, I mean, I also have I'm not going to argue this too much with you. Now I have a hot take about Klay Thompson and being the second best player on the Warriors, but we can get into that maybe at a later time.
I didn't say he was.
No, that's not. Yes, I agree with you about that, but it's. I think if we went through all the years of Klay Thompson being on the Warriors, you could probably argue. You could potentially argue that Klay Thompson never actually the second best player on the Warriors roster. That's the hot take, but I'm not. This is a new season so we are new people. We will not devolve into arguing over hot takes this year, guys. Mark our words.
Don't mark our words.
So
just getting started, man.
Oh no, but no, I mean, I think it's a lot of different things, and then obviously Steph being out with the shoulder doesn't help. But everyone has been markedly worse this year on their roster. It's not one guy. Everyone but Steph essentially has taken at least one step back.
And I think what I'm looking at the standings, and I'm looking at, although they've performed so awful on the road, they're 6 games behind the first seed in the West. So the West is not out of reach where it can't be won by this team or any team that matter. But I think because all these teams are just jam-packed is one of the reasons why they still have a chance to be a top 4, top 3 seed in the West, and potentially one. I don't think their goal should be to get a 1 seed or the 2 seed, but knowing how the Warriors used to perform, they may need to, because you have to win on the road in the playoffs. And this team hasn't shown anyone that they can win consistently on the road. Josh?
Well, I was going to ask, so they're 18-18 right now in 10th place in the West. You mentioned, that's not far from first or even 6th place, but where would you guys feel comfortable with this team going into the playoffs? Like, if they are the 6th seed, do you feel like they can still make a run, or what do they have to be, top 4 home court advantage for you to feel comfortable?
All you got to do is avoid the play-in.
Yeah.
I think if you're in the Warriors organization, that's how you're looking at it. We avoid the play-in. We slide ourselves into a first round. We slide ourselves into a first-round series against, I don't know, whoever the 5 or the 4 or the 5 seed maybe or whatever. And
I don't think they're worried about any of these teams.
Yep.
I'm sorry, they kind of went like in and out, so I didn't know you were talking still. I don't think the Warriors fear any of these teams, and as they shouldn't. I think all of these teams in the West are beatable. Even they're beatable. So I think they're right. I'm not saying they're right where they need to be. I think they're turning a corner right now. The next couple of games they have are relatively easy games that they should win. They're on a 2-game winning streak now. Their next 3 or 4 should be winnable until they face, some different competition. I think their next tough game may be the Suns coming up in the next 6 or 7 games or so. Even that is winnable based on how the Suns has been playing recently. But we're going to move on from the Golden State, and we're going to try to focus on the top of the Western Conference right now. The Pelicans, surprising a team this year. They're 22-12 right now. What is their ceiling? Are they frauds? Are they contenders, pretenders? What is the Pelicans' ceiling this season?
Hold on. Who is the Pelicans a surprising team to?
I didn't expect them to be a number 1 seed.
Do you remember any? Do you remember what I just want to call back to this shameless self promotion. Do you remember my Pelicans predictions last year pertaining the MVP award and all of that?
Yes.
Could you, for the people who may or may not be aware, put those on the record, sir?
Did it evolve the Pelican? Was Zion win MVP?
Yeah, I said I thought Zion would win MVP and that they'd be a top 4 seed in the West.
Okay, well, Zion he's not winning MVP, so that's not happening.
Probably not, but the top four in the West part looks very good.
Yeah, it does right now, but come on, Chaz. Did you expect them to be this number like this top like this good? I expect them to be a top 4 seed, like 3-2, but I wasn't expecting them to be the best team in the West right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have said I would have picked them to be number one right now, but like you said, it's so jammed up right now, anyways, that I mean, they're tied with the Nuggets for first place, and they're only a couple games up on everybody else in the playoff standings right now. So, I mean, they're first right now. I think it's safe to say they're going to be in the top 4, which coming into the season, I had
I
them.
don't think that's safe to say.
I think they'll be in the top 4. Coming into the season, I had them top 6. I think they've made that slight elevation where I feel more comfortable putting them in the upper echelon, especially with Steph Curry being out, Devin Booker being out. A couple of those top tier teams, aren't going to have their best player for a little while. So I think the Pelicans will probably continue to stay in that top 3 range for a little while. I could see them dropping a little bit further past that, but I have them in the upper echelon of the Western Conference, and I have them as a team that could get out of the conference and make it to the finals.
Okay. Sunday? Anything else on the Pelicans?
This is a finals contender. There's nothing on the roster that they're missing. I would argue this is one of, if not the deepest team in the NBA. Zion is a brilliant basketball player. Brandon Ingram is at worst a top 20 player in the league. CJ McCollum is really good. They go like 11 deep in the rotation. Like people like Najee Mitchell and like Dyson Daniels would start for a decent amount of NBA teams, and they're like the 7th and 9th men for the Pelicans.
I think it's interesting.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to say I think it's interesting that both of you think that they're championship contending, like they're a championship team. I guess I don't see it. I think they have the pieces. I just need to see if Zion could be healthy for a playoff like stretch. And I think that's a legit question to have is can he sustain, playing every other day in the playoffs, and how far can he lead this team? I'm not down on his talent. He is a league MVP. He's a candidate right now, but I wouldn't say he's the top. But I think it will be interesting to see how far this team can go, and can he stay healthy enough to get them to ultimately where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get why you're hesitant on that, and that's just something that we won't know until it's actually happening. But I mean, the way Zion has looked this season, he's looked like one of the probably 10 best players in the league. He's just been so dominant driving downhill. I mean, you really can't stop him. You can try and build up a wall as teams have, but he's so quick. He's so destructive when he gets in the lane. And then obviously the elite finishing ability. I mean, the show that he put on the other night against Minnesota, he had like 10 straight points. The steal and fast break dunk to put him up in the lead after they were trailing for most of the night. Like, I mean, he's been doing that, on a regular basis. And, like Tunde, you had him as your MVP pick. I don't know if he's gonna, get that. I don't know if he's gonna play enough games to, but he's in that conversation after 30 games. And as we've mentioned, they've been playing just as good as anybody else in the whole conference, if not the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like you mentioned all of that stuff about Zion, and I just want to put this out there real quick before we move on or don't move on or whatever we've got next. Zion gets officiated so horribly, so horribly. He should be shooting like 6 to 8 more free throws a game than he gets, but he's so big and strong that he gets hacked and just doesn't get calls.
Yeah. I agree with that. If the season was to end right now, do you guys think Nikola Jokic will be MVP?
I don't know. Probably not, but
Okay.
I think he's in that conversation. I don't know who I would have right now. I think there's probably like 5 candidates at least that would have a real argument.
Yeah.
So
I think
so
this is
right.
the most like broad it's been in a long time. Tunde?
For sure. I mean, so for me personally, right now, if you're making me pick one person, it's probably Kevin Durant, and it's just because like just like if you haven't, just please go look at KD splits. It's like video game stuff, and he's doing that while taking like an ungodly amount of mid range jumpers. He's shooting like 57% from the mid range. It's insane. Jason Tatum would probably be a close second, but like the Nikola Jokic thing, he's absolutely like if he wins MVP again, you'll hear no complaints from me. He's doing insane things as he always does. You'll hear no complaints from me. I don't think he's going to end up winning MVP because I think the same way it was with Giannis a few years ago, you know, giving somebody MVP back to back times is in some way an admission for a lot of people that this is the best player in the world, and I don't think people are there with him. Partially because people don't think he's had enough postseason success to earn that. It's kind of ridiculous because that's not really what this is supposed to be about, but it's you know, that's what it is.
Yeah.
People are bored with Nikola Jokic, essentially.
Yeah. What's the difference when you're looking at these two teams, the Nuggets and the Grizzlies? You know, two different styles. You know, their best players play two completely opposite. But they're both at the top of the standings right now. They're 2 and 3, respectively. Which team is better when it comes down to it? Who would you trust more in the playoffs? Ja Morant and the Grizzlies, Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. We've both seen them have their playoff struggles. So which team would you trust more heading into this playoff season?
I think that's.
Oh, sorry, Chaz. Go ahead. Nope, all you.
No, you got it.
Personally, I would go with Jokic and the Nuggets. Their closing lineup with, Bruce Brown and KCP in it, along with Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. is absolutely smashing people, plus minus wise. And I mean, it's kind of exactly what they dreamed of with the offseason acquisitions. It's a little bit of everything. You get perimeter defense, obviously the scoring, playmaking. I think when I look down at those two teams, I look at that lineup being one of the best 5-man combinations in the entire league. And then that's kind of where I land with siding with the Nuggets here.
Chaz?
Yeah, I would definitely lean Nuggets as well. I think they have probably I don't know if they have a deeper roster, but I trust like their top 6 or 7 guys more. Tunde, like you were alluding to, those offseason acquisitions of KCP and Bruce Brown, I thought were absolutely huge. Aaron Gordon has been playing really well recently. I mean, obviously they still need to get Murray and Porter Jr. back to, the best that they can play. But I don't think any of us expected that to be happening.
Can Murray get to that point again? I know him and Klay Thompson, they don't have similar injuries, but they're both had season-ending injuries, and sometimes they could be career-threatening injuries. Like, can he get back to that point, you think?
I mean, is he ever going to be the player that he was? Probably not. I do think he can get to the point where, he's still one of maybe the 10, 12 best point guards in the league. And if he's doing that and, he's scoring on a consistent basis, then I think that's what they need to make a deep playoff run. So I don't know, that's something that, he's been dealing with for the last several years. We really haven't seen him, playing up to his full potential since the bubble 2+ years ago. So I don't know, it is similar to Klay Thompson where, it's been something that's prolonged for years. Murray is a lot younger, so maybe that's going to help him in the long run. But I don't know. I know that I want to see it because when this Nuggets team is humming, they might be the best team in the league.
And I think I'm not a Grizzlies fan because I think they do a lot of talking and they haven't done shit to prove anything.
Sometimes you
So
just got to talk, though, right?
sometimes you got to talk, but when you losing, well, to a G League team, I mean, you shouldn't be doing a lot of talking. So
Somebody got to come get Dylan Brooks, man. That's
someone got to. I mean,
Clay
someone
tried to. Clay tried to.
someone got to. Memphis make it incredibly hard to root for them when people want to. You young dogs, you up and coming, you got a young stud as a superstar, Ja Morant, and they make it so hard to root for them by the things that they do. And it's all fun and games. It was fun the first season, the second season. But when you constantly doing it and you constantly talking, you're not backing it up. You're not doing anything in the playoffs. You're not even making it to a Western Conference. You have no room to be talking to people that have been there, that are legends in this game, that's been doing it for years, that are 4-time champs. Like, I don't think that's a wash for them to do that because you're going to have to see this team in the playoffs. And no matter what people may say, Ja Morant injury, whatever the case may be, I still have the Warriors winning that series, regardless of when push comes to shove. I believe the Warriors is going to win that series with Ja in the game or without not in the game. It doesn't matter. So I just think that team is better, and I think they proved that they're better without even playing with Steph and Wiggins, and they lost on Christmas Day. So I think this team has a lot to learn. I think if they just played a game instead of talking so much, they'd be better off. That's just my opinion. Like, I don't like when, opposing teams do that haven't won anything. You could do all that if you won something, got far in the playoffs. Hell, you won a conference championship, even if you don't win the finals. I mean, but this team hasn't literally done anything to amount the type of shit they be talking. Like, I don't get it. Like, help me, like, explain it to me because I'm lost.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely play with an edge. And I mean, in some games, I feel like it helps them. It pushes them over the top. And in other games, it kind of backfires on them, as it did on Christmas Day against the Warriors. I mean, that's just how it's going to happen with the teams like that. I feel like you never really know. It's more about how the other team responds to it, because sometimes, you can talk a big game and stuff, and then you go down to, a team that's not as good as you lose to them by 20, after talking all off season and throughout the beginning of the regular season. But I don't know. I mean, I would like to see that in a playoff matchup with both teams healthy. I think that would be a great series. And I will say, this team is they're 21-13 in third place in the Western Conference, and Jaren Jackson still isn't back to his full minutes yet. He's only played, I think, like 18 games out of 30 plus. So, I mean, for them to be playing this well, we're still not, back to where they should be. I do think that's a credit to them. I think they're a team that's probably going to end up being probably in that 4 to 5 range. So for them to be, standing at 3 is pretty impressive to me.
Gotcha. Can we talk about Baby Bird for a second? I mean,
yes, please.
Can we talk about Baby Bird for a second?
I don't know how we didn't mention him in the quick little MVP segment.
60-20. I think we're about to get there.
Yeah.
60, 21, and 10.
Wait, you like Nikola, or you like Luka Doncic now?
I'm just impressed.
I thought the last year you were saying things like, "Are we sure he's better than Kyrie Irving?"
I didn't say that. That is a lie. I did not say Kyrie. Like, I might have said somebody else.
I don't know if it was Kyrie, but I know he was comparing just about everybody else to him.
Where does he rank right now as far as the best players?
Asking me who I think like the very best player is like, I could write a dissertation on that because it's not a brief answer. Luka's somewhere in the top 5 or 6 though, for sure. Probably top 5.
Okay, in the MVP ranking, where would you put him right now?
I mean,
you already mentioned like 3 other guys, right, Tunde?
Yeah. I mean, so from my perspective, he's below some combination of Jason Tatum, KD, and Nikola Jokic.
I think he should be above Kevin Durant.
I mean, why though?
I think that the things that he's doing on the court. Now, granted, they have a better record, and the Nets have a better record now, but I think because Luka is a solo act and he still has his team in the 5th seed, I think that should hold a little more weight than everything that's going on with the Nets. The reason that I dot Kevin Durant is because it's not just Kevin Durant, it's everything that's been happening with Brooklyn. Everything from the beginning of the year to the vaccination, to the suspension of Kyrie. Although that's not fair, I think voters look at that and say, we can't get this guy the MVP. The team was god-awful at the beginning of the season. And now he's turning it around. The MVP is about being consistent from game one. Not saying you have to play every game, but being consistent from the start of the season to the end of the season. And Kevin Durant hasn't been that. He's starting to become that. He's started over the last, 10 games or so of, them winning, this winning streak they have of doing that. But he hasn't been like that since game one.
Please go look at KD splits. The team was playing awful. Kevin Durant wasn't playing awful.
Well, that's still an indictment to him, though. No matter
what, Kevin Durant, however you want
to slice it, you still get the blame. That's like if you're the best player in the world, or you're a top 5 player and your team don't make the playoffs, no matter what the case may be, or your roster may be shitty, people are still gonna look at you like, why you can't will your team to the playoffs? It might not be fair.
The Nets are the 2 seed right now in the East. Like we're
in the league,
yeah. Like it's not KD fault that Kyrie Irving don't like Jewish people and believes every internet conspiracy he reads. What does that have to do with his MVP candidacy?
I'm saying it also looks at how it. I don't think the MVP is just about wins and losses. It's never been about wins and losses. The MVP is a story. Who has the best story in the league? It's not just about wins and losses. Are you putting up good numbers? Who's having a good story? When you win MVP, you're doing something historic. It's not always historic, but people looking at it, what is a great story? That's why Nikola Jokic won't win MVP, because people are voted for TE. We don't want to keep giving to the same guy over and over again. What's different? He's putting up incredible numbers. Why is he in the league candidate for MVP right now? Giannis, he's won back-to-back MVPs. Why people sleeping on Giannis? People got Joel Embiid in the conversation, which he should be, but only reason someone would say, oh, give it to Joel Embiid, because they feel sorry that he didn't get it last year. I mean, it's a story. It's literally who's having the best story. And that's a factor. That's not the end-all be-all, but that's a factor.
I hear what you're saying. It should be about basketball. That's what this is about at the end of the day. Wins and losses, team success, wins and losses, impact on your team, how well are you playing. It's historic, but the history is because you did something basketball related. That's what this should be. Chaz, I want to make sure you get to say your piece, so please go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously, we all know that the narrative matters, but I mean, unless you're playing at that level, then you're not even going to be in that conversation. And I mean, over the last 2+ weeks, I don't know that anybody's been playing better ball than Kevin Durant. I don't really know how much it matters that the losses were at the beginning of the season, if at this point they're ahead of the Mavericks or, every other team except for the Celtics anyways. So, I mean, I kind of get the narrative, but I mean, who's had a better narrative the last, huh?
Well, it's recency bias.
Well, I mean, they're playing better than anybody else in the league. Like that's important. You have to look at that.
That's fair, but there's still half of the season left.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't think if we're in game 80, I don't think anybody's going to be saying, "Do we remember how the Nets struggled at the beginning of the season? Let's pick somebody else over Kevin Durant for MVP."
But I'm not saying that's the case. But I'm saying that the MVP is a story.
But isn't it a good story to get off to a bad start and then flip a switch and all of a sudden now you're on
a better story is Jason Tatum and the team losing in the finals last year. They coming back and they trying to rewrite the wrong. Mm-hmm. That's a better story than what Kevin Durant's doing.
Yeah, I would say Tatum's, his story would be better. So would Embiid, somebody like you mentioned. But I mean, if Kevin Durant is playing better than all of them at the end of the season, then I think he's going to be the MVP. I don't know that.
And I'm not dismissing like Kevin Durant don't deserve it, but also I can't act like that the MVP isn't. You're not telling a story when you're saying who's the MVP. You can make an argument that Harden had a better season than Steph one of those years he had the MVP. Steph was on a roll. You're not going to give it to Harden. He probably put up better numbers. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look. But I know one of those years, the players voted Harden MVP. They gave it to Steph. And Harden was not happy about that. But it's the story. The Warriors are the talk of the town. They're the darlings of the NBA. They're winning championships. Your team is struggling. Like, no matter what the case may be, it's a better story. So I'm not saying Kevin Durant. Go ahead.
I would also just like to say there's no point within the last 10 years in which James Harden has been a better basketball player than Steph Curry.
It's not always about that either. I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing. I never thought for once in my life that Harden has been a better player than Steph. That's not the argument. The argument is people thought he had a better story. And the players thought James Harden played the better season. So the players voted him MVP, but the media voted Steph MVP. So it really depends on your criteria, what you're looking for.
Obviously, I have lots of respect for the players in the league. I also do not think they should be the be all end all of You'll often hear a lot of people say things like, "Oh, well, you never played, so like, what do you know? You didn't play in the league." But like, players in the league will say things like, "Stephen Curry is a system player." I don't have to take you all serious. I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, and it's hard to talk about this next team because it's always a caveat with them.
Wait, can we stay on the Mavericks real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we talked a lot about how it kind of had an MVP impact, but we didn't talk about Luka's actual, that game where he had 60, 21, and 10, and then also just how he's been playing this whole season. So, I mean, beyond that night, if you want to talk about what you guys saw, in that performance against the Knicks where they were trailing by 9 with like 30 seconds left, he somehow leads them back. Dana, I know you said it was one of the best regular season performances ever, which I definitely agree with.
Top 10 for sure.
First time we've ever seen somebody put up those numbers. Only the second time we've seen somebody go for a 60-point triple-double. And then you add on to the fact that they had the, miraculous comeback, which we haven't seen something like that, I believe, in like 20 years. So, I mean, all that mixed into one, plus the fact that he's been playing at such a high level all year. Is this team a contender? Is this team, probably a middle of the pack type of team with an MVP candidate on it? Or, where do you guys rank this team and how does it compare to, his actual play?
No, I don't think they're a contender.
Not a contender?
No. I think Luka could carry them as far as he can take them. Mm-hmm. And I think their ceiling is the Western Conference Finals, as we saw last year. But they're a streaky team. When they're hitting their shots, they're bombing them. Like, they can't miss. But as we saw in the first half against the Lakers, they couldn't buy a three. Yeah. And all of a sudden they come out third quarter, they couldn't miss a damn three. It really depends on how these role players are playing. But also when it comes to the playoffs, everything slows down. Every possession matters. They can't run the offense that they want to run in the postseason. And that's why I've always thought that this team, he always needed more help. He needs more help than what they're giving him. Because although they've given him shooters, he needs more help when it comes to not only interior defense, but I think he also needs help as far as another playmaker. And I believe they have a couple playmakers, but I think he needs someone on par to him. Who that may be, I'm not sure. We can look around the league to see who's a good fit. But I think this team needs more for him in order for them to take that next leap, which the NBA Finals. I do not think presently constructed they can win an NBA championship. I will put them in like the top 5 as far as the Western Conference. But as far as winning a championship, going through, a healthy Golden State Warriors team, I think it'd be the same result. They will go down.
Yeah, I would be a little surprised if this team got back to the conference finals, let alone a finals berth. I think at some point Luka's going to get to that point and win a championship. I probably think it's even going to be in Dallas. I just don't think it's yet. There's still a lot of roster reconstruction that I think they need to do to really get to that point, surrounding him with talent like you're talking about, Danny. I do think this team is going to be very competitive. They can beat anybody on any given night. So, I mean, that's going to be a team that you want to keep up with all during the regular season and in the playoffs. They might be able to pick off somebody, depending on the matchup, depending on where they finish in the seeding. I feel like it's important for them to finish as high as they can just to get that home court if possible. It's probably more likely that they finish in that 5 or 6 range anyways. Right now, they are 20-16 in 5th place in the West, but only a half game back of the Clippers for 4th. So I think this team is going to be in the mix all season. I did want to ask you guys, I think Luka is somebody that we all have in that MVP conversation and expect him to be there all season long. What is the Mavericks, their win-loss record, how they're playing, how is that going to affect it? If this team is in 5th place at the end of the regular season, can Luka still win the MVP?
I don't think you could be a 5th seed and win MVP. I think that's a little too low. But also I don't want to say completely no because it depends on how he plays.
The Nuggets were 6th seed last year, right?
I think were the Nuggets the 6th seed?
I think they were.
Yes.
I think they were.
The Nuggets were the
also
6th seed.
But that also came from
2017.
but that also came from Jokic putting up insane numbers in the process.
But Luka can do that.
he definitely can. But I'm saying that's what it's going to have to take for him to get it. If they're standing at 5th, 6th seed, it's going to take him putting up those type of performances like he did. I'm not saying he have to go out and get 60, 21, and 10 every night, but he's going to have to get 30, 35 points with 8 or 9 assists or 9, 10 boards in order for them to even be competitive. I think. I don't think their roster constructed is good enough to beat a healthy, loaded Clippers team, Nuggets team, Warriors team. I don't think they could beat those type of teams with their roster. And those are the teams you're probably going to have to go through in order to get to another conference finals or perhaps an NBA. To get to an NBA finals. You don't have to get to, through one of these teams. And I don't think they can beat one of those teams, like those 3 teams I named right now, constructed right now. I don't think they can do it. Depending on health, the Clippers is a complete mess. It really depends. So
Yeah.
What
do you guys? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I mean, Chaz, like you alluded to, there is precedent for a team, a player on a team that's like a 6th seed or somewhere around there to win the award. Russell Westbrook famously did it in 2017.
He averaged a triple-double.
Yeah, he averaged a triple-double. Nikola Jokic did it last year. Yeah, I mean, I think just generally speaking, it takes phenomenal numbers to win the MVP award. Luka Doncic is, like you alluded to, Chaz, very capable of putting up phenomenal numbers. Whether I think this is how it should be or not, people tend to let factors outside of basketball also impact how they vote for the MVP award. For instance, if somebody's won it too many times, people usually get bored of voting for them. I think that's stupid as hell, but that is how the award tends to work by people who get to decide who wins the award.
Voter fatigue.
Voter fatigue is a very real concept. If voter fatigue wasn't real, both LeBron James and Michael Jordan would have more MVP awards than they actually ended up having. And there would be no Derrick Rose MVP ever. You said what?
Nothing.
I said LeBron and Michael Jordan. I'm talking about the greats here.
All right.
But yeah, I think Luka's more than capable. Obviously, it'll require something phenomenal from him, but he is phenomenal. So we'll see what happens.
some high praise there.
Well, I
I
mean,
mean,
Luka's
I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna sit here and lie like the dude is not killing it. So,
he's one of the best players in the world, and he's what,
yeah, he's definitely top
20,
five.
what is he, 24 something?
I definitely put him up there at probably five. You know, you can't forget Giannis, Steph, Jokic, Embiid. You know, Kevin Durant is making noise, so he's up there. And I mean, I think that's six. You know, someone has to be on the
But
outside.
Jason
I'm putting
Tatum is somewhere in
I'm
there.
putting
Jason
Tatum in that
Tatum.
conversation.
Yeah, but I don't think Jason Tatum is better than those guys I just named. If I'm being
I think
honest,
he's better than I think he's better than at least one of them. But
at
Who?
least one of them.
Who?
Well, who would you take out?
personally, well, I mean, personally, I
Giannis,
think
Steph. Giannis, Steph.
I understand.
Jokic.
I'm gonna say it. Personally,
Okay.
I think if you were asking me to start a team, I think personally I'd rather start a team with Jason Tatum than Joel Embiid. For several reasons. Durability, the fact
can't
that
argue
we've
that.
the fact that we've seen both of those guys in the playoffs, and for whatever it is, I'm the furthest thing from the hot takey. This guy doesn't show up because I talk about basketball and then that weird ass psychoanalysis. I'm not Stephen A. Smith, but Joel Embiid, I think partially due to the injuries, has not performed up to the level that you would expect a player of his caliber to perform up to in the playoffs. We've seen Jason Tatum, do that. We've seen him do
Not in
that
the
in
finals, he
multiple.
didn't. But
We've seen him do that in multiple seasons. We watched him have 46 points against the Milwaukee Bucks in an elimination game. We could keep going with Jason Tatum's playoff accolades, whether that's going toe to toe with LeBron James as a rookie. But I started a team with him over Joel Embiid.
I don't necessarily disagree. I'm just poking fun, at you.
100%, yeah.
But I can see that. I'm not going to be mad if someone chose Joel Embiid over Tatum. But I'm not going to be mad if someone chose Tatum over Embiid. I really think it's a toss up, But I'd probably go with Embiid solely because I hate to say this because I never say stuff like this. Solely because of potential. Like, I think he has more potential right now than Tatum. I think Tatum is he's getting towards his peak. I don't even think Embiid has reached the most dominant that he can be. And that might be an indictment to him, But I also think that I don't think Tatum can be better than what he's playing, like over the last 2-3 years.
Really?
I don't think he
better.
has any more of an upside than what he's doing now. And for him to be that young and for me to think that, it's crazy. But I don't think he can play any better than we've seen him against Milwaukee, against, not excluding the finals because he wasn't good in the finals, against Brooklyn last year, how he's been playing this year. I don't think he has any more of an upside. I think this is the best we're going to see of him. I don't think we've seen the best of Joel Embiid. Like, he has too many tricks. He has so much power. He can play so many different styles of basketball. I'm not saying that Tatum can't, but I think I'm going to take Joel Embiid just based on potential, and he hasn't lived up to it. So I might sound crazy saying that, but also I think if you put Joel Embiid on the Celtics and you took JT off and you kept Jaylen Brown, I think they'd be just as dominant. If you put Jason Tatum on the Celtics, I think they take a step back. I don't think they're as dominant with James Harden and Maxey. I don't think they're as dominant. I think the Celtics have an old train, a gravy machine going on right now. They are on a mission and they're playing lights out. But I don't think if you put Jason Tatum on another team, that's a very contending team, that he can be as productive. take Steph off the Warriors and put Jason Tatum on the Warriors. Are they as good? I don't think they're as good. But
far off.
I think it really depends. I don't think they're good. I don't think they're a good team.
Ooh.
But I think obviously I think they're obviously I think they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make some noise, but I don't think they're good enough to get to a finals. So
Are they good enough to get to a finals right now with Steph?
I think so. I'm not writing out the Warriors to go to the finals. Are you?
I'm not writing them off or saying I'm writing them off. But I mean, I think if you would, I think the basketball we are watching them played up to this point this season does not scream contender or a contending team at all. Yeah.
I mean, I might sound crazy, but I mean, shoot me, I got them coming out of the West. So I think they're going to eventually figure it out and they're going to come out the West. And then it didn't look good last year. Obviously, granted, they didn't have as many problems last year they have now. But as far as the defense and everything like that.
I don't think it looked this bad last year, though, did it?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I still think because the West is so open that anybody could be had. They could be had. Someone could beat them in a 7-game series. So I think because it's that way, and there's no definitive dominant team in the West. I thought the Phoenix Suns was going that way again. They slipped. You can't really, no one's fearing the Pelicans. Like, I'm just gonna tell you what it is. But there's no superior team in the West. And for the Warriors just to be hovering around, staying afloat, not really out of the game right now, that's not a perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect for them because they're struggling, but I'm saying the situation from other teams is working in their favor because no team is stretching out a lead in the West. Like, they're 6 games behind. Like, no team is completely running away with the conference. And I think that's in their favor. No team is definitively running away with the conference saying, oh, this team is by far the best team in the West. We don't have that. And because we don't have that, the door is open. Like, at least to me, I think the door is open. Like, I'm not going to rule them out.
I'm definitely not going to rule out the Warriors. I think they'll get it figured out. I don't know if I feel more confident that, for them compared to the other Western Conference teams. It kind of feels like it's, like you said, is wide open that, maybe 5 teams could go in. And I kind of feel the same way about all of them that, they could make it to the finals or they could get knocked out in the second round. I will say, as we're talking about Tatum, I mean, he's right in that MVP conversation, and I definitely feel more confident that the Celtics are going to return to the finals than I would the Warriors right now. I mean, the Celtics have been playing better than anybody.
No, I think that's true. I will have more confidence. If you had to, I feel like if you put me on a lie detector test, I'm gonna say that the Celtics have a better chance of winning the finals, but also for some reason I don't see them getting past the Bucks. If I'm being honest, I don't know if they're healthy. I don't know how they get past Milwaukee. Like, really, I got to see it to believe it again. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not down that they can't, but I'm not going to say definitively that they're representing the East. Like, the Nets are coming. The Nets are coming. Now, do I think they could beat the Celtics and the Bucks? No, I don't. But I got to see them beat Milwaukee again. Like, I have to. I'm not saying it was a fraud or, they didn't deserve to be there. I have to see them beat Milwaukee again. So, I just have to.
Do you think they could?
I think they could.
Yeah.
Will I put money on it? No. I will put money on Milwaukee to win that.
Oh, okay.
But they definitely could beat them. Yeah. They have, from top to bottom, I think they have the better team. I think the Suns have the better team. They just don't have the better player. And Giannis makes a big difference. If Chris Middleton is playing or he's out, that sways who wins. Like, I think it matters. He's somewhat of their closer. So if he's out again due to injuries, okay, it might go the same way that it went last year. But if he's healthy, full strength, I got to see them go head to head again. I don't know. I can't definitively say the Celtics.
Yeah, it's not a definitive answer for me either, but I think even with Middleton back, I think it's very, very possible that the Celtics beat them again. And I mean, I think the Celtics can beat anybody. If you told me that they were going to win the finals, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. I mean, they've been, kind of taking a step back a couple weeks ago. I think they've won 4 in a row again after dropping before that 26-10 through 36 games, best record in the league, 15-5 at home, 11-5 away from home. We've been talking about how a lot of teams this season have struggled on the road. The Celtics are not one of them. And then, comparing them to a team like the Warriors, who we were just talking about, and obviously they faced in the finals last year, has been struggling on defense all year. And that's just not the case with Boston. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. I mean, they're one of the deepest teams in the league. I think they can beat anybody, and I think they got a real chance to win it all.
Tunde, I'm going to let you go. I'm personally going to sign off. I know you guys have a lot more to talk about. Getting to some of this other team, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Kings, the Rockets. So, guys, they're going to be talking about some other Western Conference teams here in the next couple of minutes, but I'm going to sign out.
All right, Danny, we'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, see you guys.
Talk to you soon.
All right, Tunde, if you want to just keep this going, we can probably maybe talk for another 20 or 30 minutes, depending on how long some of these teams talk, if that's good for you.
Sounds like a plan.
But we might as well just keep going down the Western Conference. We talked about the Pelicans, the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, and the Mavericks. How about the Clippers? 21-16, 4th place right now, 11-7 at home. But obviously they've struggled with injuries as Kawhi is still really trying to get in the mix. I think he had like 8 last night, maybe. He had one of his better games against Boston last night. So I think it's really good to see him start to get back out there and feel more and more comfortable, which we haven't seen in a long time from him either. So, what are your early thoughts on the Clippers? Positive, negatives, and where do you see this team being in a couple of months?
I mean, I think the Clippers are one of those teams where I just find myself not having much to say. They're a pretty deep roster. If Kawhi Leonard stays healthy, this is a team that could some would argue should win the title. If Kawhi Leonard doesn't stay healthy, they're not going to do that. I don't know, man. It's got to just really suck if you're a part of the Clippers organization. Just knowing that we all have to spend all this time watching closely the lower body of a 33-year-old guy 33-year-old man who's clearly got like genuine like degenerative like tissue down there. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
just hoping he stays healthy.
I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine Kawhi being healthy for an entire season. It's been so long since we've seen that. And like you said, it's hard to watch sometimes. I mean, somebody that's always been so great and so explosive is just moving so slow. And it's just he seems uncomfortable. He seems a little out of place at times. He doesn't seem as sure of himself. Which, I mean, it'd be impossible not to feel that way after having these type of injuries. I'm hoping that he can continue to improve. This team still has a lot of talent on it. Still has a lot of depth. Still is one of the best coaches in the league. Obviously, Paul George has been playing pretty well. I don't think he's been playing up to his ability either. So I don't know. This is a team that I feel like has been playing okay. Like I said, they're 5 games above 500, and they're in 4th place right now. Is that a team where you think they're going to stay in that place? Do you see this team being 4th or 5th at the end of the season, or do you think somebody else is going to catch them and bump them down a few spots?
I mean, I think if teams are playing up to the potential of their roster, then yes, I do think the Warriors. I do think the Clippers, very easily end up being a top 4 seed. I also think that yeah, again, it's really just all about Kawhi Leonard's health. We haven't seen Kawhi Leonard finish a season in a position that I would consider healthy since 2016. Um, that was a really long time ago. In the world of sports, 2016 was an eternity ago. That's almost 7 years ago. Like Todd Gurley was an elite NFL running back 7 years ago, and now Todd Gurley is retired. Andrew Luck was playing football 7 years ago. Andrew Luck is not retired. He's been retired for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Yet that was just a long time ago. And I know a lot of people listening to this are probably thinking, what about 2019? I would implore you to go watch the 2019 finals, watch like the last, I don't know, 3 games, and literally just watch Kawhi Leonard. He was not healthy or anything even resembling healthy. He was dragging his left leg up and down the court and was not moving well at all. It's a testament to how skilled a basketball player he is and what a phenomenal shooter that he is, that he was as effective as a scorer as he was, even with dealing all of that. But it wasn't accidental that Kyle Lowry had to score damn near 30 for them to win that game 6. Kawhi was not doing good physically.
Yeah, I thought that really started to show that whole playoff run. It seemed like even in the second round series against Philly, he was kind of hobbled. And then to imagine that he still went on 2 more series after that and led that team to a championship, it's kind of unbelievable. This year, he's averaging 16.9, 6.1 rebounds, 3.7 assists. He's been okay. Like I mentioned, he had the 26 points against Boston last night. I know he had like 30 against the Wizards a few weeks back. So I mean, there have been some signs of it, but I totally agree with you. This team is not going to reach its full potential. It's not going to be able to make a serious run in the playoffs unless Kawhi is at least nearing the player that he used to be. I'm not saying he has to be exactly that, but if he's a player that's averaging 16, 17 points and isn't able to play on a consistent basis, then this team isn't going to make any type of run.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I love me some Norman Powell. Nicholas Batum is awesome. The career revitalization that he's had in LA has been great. Those guys are probably not dragging you to a finals. Paul George or no Paul George, it's all on Kawhi. That's where things kind of start and end when we're talking about the long-term future of that Clippers organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we'll keep it pushing then. Why don't we move down to the 6th place team in the Western Conference, the Phoenix Suns. Actually, they're tied for 5th with a team we already mentioned, the Dallas Mavericks. Phoenix is 20-16 as well, 14-5 at home. And they've been dealing with injuries as well. Chris Paul's been out for a little while, and then Devin Booker as well. I think he's going to be out for like maybe a month or so, which I think that just came down a few days ago that was for sure going to be at least 4 weeks. So we'll see how this team does in the meantime. What do you think about the Suns, though? This is a team that obviously they were the number 1 seed last year and then bowed out in the second round of the playoffs in a pretty big disappointment. Do you think this is a team that can get back to that? Do you think they can surpass those expectations? What are your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns?
My first thought on the Phoenix Suns is like reading anonymous NBA executives and people who work in personnel talking about Jay Crowder is hilarious to me, because they were like, because people were like, all right, it was one thing if like KD was like, trade me, I'm a holdout or whatever, but they were like, Jay Crowder, get the fuck out of here. That's my first thought. They could use him. They could really use him.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, I personally, I find Jay Crowder beyond obnoxious. Mostly because he's one thing for those of you who haven't listened to us talk. I don't really dislike players. The only thing that gets you on my shit list as a player is if you're out here trying to hurt people, because that's not cool. Jay Crowder uh, is absolutely the kind of guy who is out here trying to hurt people, which is, it's some BS. And he's also the hold me back, I'll fuck you up. You're lucky they wouldn't let me get my hands on you kind of person, which is just like, bro, can we just play basketball, please? Anyway, people like that I find obnoxious. But I mean, I don't know. I think the Suns are a team that could use another wing, who plays passable defense and is a okay 3-point shooter, which is exactly what Jay Crowder is. Um, Aside from that, I mean, I don't really see great things for their future as far as this season goes. They really only have one guy who can consistently break a defense down off the dribble. Obviously, that's Devin Booker, and they rushed him back from what would appear to be that groin injury. So the timetable there is murky. I don't think that portends good things to the rest of the season for them. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't either. This is a team that I was really high on last year, and this year it seems like they're just having to rely way too much on, guys like Damian Lee and Landry Shamet, and Campaign, who they have for the last couple of years. But he's averaging just as he's averaging just as many points as Chris Paul, and there's an obvious decline from Chris Paul in the last few years that has continued this season. So I don't know what he's going to look like in a few months when they're trying to make a playoff push. We already talked about the Devin Booker injury. He was playing at an MVP level, or at least an all NBA level until the injury. So that sucks to see for him, because I thought he was on his way to another career year. But I just don't see it with this team. I mean, they're a playoff team to me, but I don't see them winning one round. And I really don't see any path for them getting much better for the rest of this season. I mean, they might be able to pull off a trade with Jay Crowder. I don't know what that's going to get them back. And I mean, I'm assuming this team is going to make the playoffs just because of, they have DeAndre Ayton, they have Chris Paul, Devin Booker is going to come back at some point. I expect him to continue to play well. But I don't see this team getting any further than the first round. Well, we can probably move on to the play-in teams unless you have any other thoughts on the Suns, or the Clippers, or anybody else in that upper echelon.
Not really. Honestly, I think that the I don't really find the playing teams in the West all that interesting. Because it's teams like we've already talked about the Warriors, but it's like the real interesting stuff is like the trash teams in the West. But I understand. Let's talk about the playing teams.
Well, yeah, you mentioned that we already talked about the Warriors, who are right now in 10th place, but we expect, are going to be higher than that when the season ends. The other three teams that are currently in the play-in are the Sacramento Kings, Portland Trailblazers, and Utah Jazz, who are all separated by one game, with the Kings being 7, followed by Portland and the Utah. We don't have to talk about all three of them if you don't want to, but, out of those three, is there one of them that you think is an actual team that is gonna get into the play-in and will actually have a chance to upset somebody after that? Because, I mean, I don't know how you feel about Sacramento, but they've actually kind of impressed me this season. And then on the flip side, somebody like Utah, who has played really good ball at times this year. We saw them get off to the hot start, and then they kind of struggled for a little while, and then they're starting to play better again. I mean, they're fun to watch at some nights, but that's a team that I just don't buy. The Kings, on the other hand, and maybe the Trailblazers to an extent, I actually do feel like they are playing some pretty good ball that will translate to, to April, May, and maybe they can sneak through the play-in and then give somebody a hard time in the first round. So just, what are your thoughts on one of those teams?
Oh, I mean, if you're asking me which, I'm assuming we're saying non-Warriors playing team
Yeah.
will is likely to make it out of the play-in and give somebody, a run or give somebody some trouble. I mean, I think that would probably be Portland. I think when I watch Portland, I see a team that is finally able to get some stops after all these years. It's still not great defensive personnel, Um, Anthony Simons is not unlike CJ McCollum in a lot of ways. Um, but I think I look at that team and I look at Jeremy Grant, and Jeremy Grant is exactly what they've been hoping and dreaming and praying for on the wing for the last like decade. Um, he's a perfect fit for that roster and for what they need is a guy who can slide up and down the lineup, guard multiple positions, and is a really high level secondary scorer and creator. Um, who was even shown at different points in his career, like some of his Detroit stint, that if you really, really need him to, he can slide into the role of being a primary ball handler and go get his own. Um, Less than ideal, but if you really need him to, that's there. Um, I do want to talk a little bit about Sacramento, though. Um, when they traded Tyrese Halliburton, a lot of people laughed, pointed at them, and said, they're so stupid. Why would they do that? Personally, it's not a trade I would have made either if I had that decision-making power, but I understood it. As much as Domantas Sabonis has his, defensive warts, as does De'Aaron Fox, their skill sets, even on paper, just kind of complemented each other perfectly on the offensive end of the floor. You're really seeing that come to fruition. They are really hard to stop. Um, ultimately, I think you and I both know you have to get stops to win in the playoffs, and I don't really know how they do that. But there's a non-zero chance that they just run somebody off the floor if they do make the play in and make the playoffs that way and become a scary, 7 or 8 seed.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, that's a team that you don't really want to play when it's just one game, an elimination game. I mean, they might just be able to outscore you, really turn it into an up and down game, get the tempo going, and they might hang 120 points on you, and you just simply can't keep up on that night. This isn't a team that has a good defense at all, like you mentioned. So if they are going to beat somebody like that, it's going to have to be outscoring them, which is something that you don't necessarily want to deal with. Portland, on the other hand, is a team that I think they're better offensively than defensively, and they have that ability to really outscore you on some nights. But they've also improved defensively than in recent years, and they actually have a couple of guys on the wing, like Grant, like Shaden Sharp. I think Josh Hart has actually been really impactful for them this season on both ends of the floor. So I think Portland's in a better spot. I will say I think both of those teams are going to stay in that play-in mix, and I think whoever they play in that play-in game, they're going to be competitive and they're going to give them a run for their money. I mean, they're probably not going to be more talented than them. But when you have, for Portland, you have 3 guys scoring above 22 points per game, obviously with Dame, and then also with Simons and Grant have been scoring over 22. You have Nurkic. I mean, that's a pretty deep roster. And then the Kings, I agree with you that I wouldn't have done the Halliburton for Sabonis trade, but Sabonis has been pretty good. Him and Fox play off each other much better than I thought they would have initially. And then they also have a lot of kind of other guys like Malik Monk, Kevin Herter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray. All of those guys have been playing pretty well in kind of reserve roles. So I don't know. Those are 2 teams that I don't really see them getting out of the first round. I don't see them making any serious run, but I do see them giving somebody some trouble in that play-in, and maybe in the first round if possible.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and realistically, when do we really get runs from a 7 or an 8 seed, right? In the NBA playoffs. But if we were going to get runs from teams who were at the bottom of the standings, I think we'd get those 2. I do want to shout out the Utah Jazz. I love Lauri Markkanen. Have since he was playing in Arizona. Um, I think for me, you could always kind of see it with him, especially because like some guys just aren't like afraid to mix it up. And despite the fact that coming out of college, he was really, really kind of wiry. He wasn't afraid to mix it up, wasn't afraid to compete, wasn't afraid to, you know, go be physical, box out, try to go get a rebound. And aside from the offensive skill, the shooting, the ability to put it on the deck, those guys usually just kind of, when they're competitive to a certain level, they end up figuring it out. Like a Colin Sexton, it's the same sort of deal. When you're just willing to compete at a certain level, and that shows in your game, even if you're a 6'3" guard who's actually like 6 feet and a half, like Colin Sexton is, you just figure it out. You'll figure out a way to be a productive player at the NBA level. I I understood why I guess there wasn't. Let me rephrase. Let me revise that statement. I couldn't understand why there wasn't like a market for Colin Sexton this offseason, because he's like a fairly efficient, like 23, 24 point a game scorer. I understand that he doesn't really pass. I understand he has defensive warts, but I thought it was crazy that nobody really looked at the roster and said they wanted that. I thought it was kind of wild that Cleveland, at least at the time, I thought it was wild that Cleveland didn't want that. Obviously, as we now know, they said, why would we do that when we could just get Donovan Mitchell, which makes total sense. But I mean, the qualifying offer they extended to him at the time before we knew they were in the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the big thing when I watched Utah this year is that Walker Kessler has immediately stepped into the NBA and been fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. We knew his one like bankable elite NBA skill would be rim protection, and he's really, really leaned into the kind of the Rudy Gobert development curve, shall we say.
Yeah, Walker Kessler is not somebody that I expected to have such an impact in his rookie year. I think I was kind of thinking, more a couple of years down the line, he would start to become a rotation player, and potentially a pretty good rim protector. But yeah, like you said, he's pretty much done it since day one. He's been really impressive this season, as has most of that Utah Jazz roster. I mean, I kind of diminished them earlier, but they play just as hard as anybody in the league, and just because they're kind of outcast, guys that were shipped there on return packages from trades from Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, plus some other guys that were just kind of thrown in. I mean, like Jordan Clarkson has continued to have a really good year, as has Markkanen, like you mentioned. So I mean, it's good to see this team playing hard. They play hard pretty much every single night. They have a good offense. They share the ball. I don't know what the ceiling is. I guess they probably, if they have decided that they would rather compete rather than tank this season, I feel like the goal probably has to be to stay in that play-in mix. Is this a team that you think will be in the play-in at the end of the season? Or is it more likely that somebody like the Lakers or the Timberwolves or somebody else starts to play better and knocks them out?
Oh man, I have a hard time putting anything positive on the Timberwolves right now. Um, even past the basketball and the basketball fit, I don't think those guys like each other very much, and that's yeah, it's just like there's just passive aggressiveness dripping on their every on-court interaction. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm watching them. I'm watching Cat, be annoyed he didn't get the ball when he runs the floor, and then get the ball passed to him as he's basically running directly out of bounds. And then I'm watching, Ant roll his eyes at Rudy Gobert. I'm watching Rudy Gobert not really play with a ton of effort or intensity in doing the things that he does the best. I mean, I have a hard time looking at the Timberwolves and seeing a playoff team or a play-in team right now. Um, the Lakers are just, there's just not much to say. when I talked earlier on this episode about Najee Marshall and Dyson Daniels, the Lakers are one of the specific teams I had in mind. Those guys would play 34 minutes a night if they were Lakers. It's just a thin roster. Pat Bev has put on a Lakers jersey and been barely playable. Kendrick Nunn has been actually unplayable.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why that damn bone bruise kept him out for 2 whole seasons. But yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know what else to say about the Lakers roster. I thought they were a playing team, pending, whatever they decided to do with the Russell Westbrook thing. Westbrook has settled in fairly nicely to being the 6th man, I guess. But without Anthony Davis, that's not a playoff or a playing team. Just realistically, they're just the roster is just so thin. And it's not coaching. It's not It's not really Darvin Ham. What do you do? We're talking about like Wenyen Gabriel and like and Thomas Bryant. Well, what are you supposed to do with that? Thomas Bryant is defensively unplayable on many nights. And even then they need Thomas Bryant because with AD hurt and then Thomas Bryant's out for a little bit, like what are the bigs we're rolling with? How are you supposed to make this team work? Like, do I think Austin Reeves should play more and should, play more time with like Russell Westbrook off the court? Like, yeah, but like, is that the difference between them winning 15 more games? No.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of tweaks that I feel like this team can make, but it's not going to be enough to make an actual difference. I mean, since the 2-10 start, they had started to play a little bit better after that, until the Anthony Davis injury, which was almost 2 weeks ago now. And he's going to be out for a little while longer. I mean, it was good to see him playing at such a high level, but I just don't see this team really competing for anything. I guess if AD comes back and gets back to that level, then they probably have a chance to get into that play-in. They're only a few games back right now, 3.5 games back of the 10 seed. So, I mean, they're in that conversation, but this team they're not deep enough, and they don't have a good enough defense to compete on a consistent basis, and actually challenge some of those better teams in the Western Conference. So, yeah, I agree with you. I just don't see it with this team. I would probably say their peak is probably the play-in. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I think if you could put LeBron James in a winner-take-all scenario, you would get LeBron James, if you catch my drift. In that, like, if they do get into a situation like that, I can see LeBron saying, "Fuck these people, I'm scoring 50," and then doing that. And he's still very capable of doing that, but they got to get there first. And right now, I don't think this is a playing team. So it looks like they'll. So I mean, we'll see how long AD's out. But like right now, I would imagine that this year's Lakers team ends up going the way of last year's Lakers team, which is that they don't see any postseason action at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly leaning that way after 35 games with a 14-21 record, and one of the worst defenses in the whole league. The Timberwolves, who you mentioned a second ago, is somebody who I mean, the fit was just not there from the first game of the season. When they played Oklahoma City, I think even though they won that game, you could see it's going to take a really, really long time for Cat and Gobert to play next to each other, if they're ever going to get there, which, I mean, after the Towns injury, and he's still going to be out for a little while longer, it's hard to really think that this team is ever going to figure it out. Like you said, it just seems like they don't really like each other. I mean, Cat took a few digs at Anthony Edwards earlier in the season, which, I mean, I think they have a pretty close relationship, but you don't really want to start doing that in the public eye, where guys feel like you're kind of trying to diminish them, especially with Ant kind of taking over that position as, being one of the leaders on the team and being one of the best players on the team. So I don't know. And then from Edwards' connection with Rudy Gobert, I mean, it took a few years for Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert to kind of fall out. It seems like that's already happening with Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. So who knows where that's going to be at the end of the season? This team looks like a total mess. They did before the Towns injury, and they have even more so since. I believe they've lost 4 straight. I mean, with all the talent on the roster, you have to continue to put in. Obviously, having no first round picks, you have to try and make the play in. You have to try and win as many games as you can because there's really no alternative option. So maybe this team can start to play a little bit better and, flirt with that, 40 wins or so right now, but being a few games under 500 and being, a game and a half out of that 10th spot, I think it's going to be hard for them to make the play in. But I mean, like I said, there's really no other option for them. So they have to continue to try and at least make it to the play in.
I can. Well, I think from the outside looking in, I'm starting to understand why people around the NBA, like players, why they don't like fuck with Rudy Gobert. I'm starting to get it. I still think that he's extremely good at the things he's extremely good at, but he also seems to just have this like stunning lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm talking more about I know it was a thing that blew up a few weeks ago. Elon Musk had a tweet about prosecuting Dr. Fauci. Rudy Gobert liked, and it's just like funny seeing that, and then knowing the history that Rudy Gobert has with COVID, and being the NBA's de facto patient zero. And he was the first NBA player to contract the virus. Maybe decent chance he wasn't, but more about that. Obviously, we all know the stunt with him touching all the mics and coughing, and then it's like you're doing that, and then publicly trying to say that COVID isn't actually a big deal after millions of people have died from it. You, especially given that you're teammates with someone in Karl Anthony Towns who's very, very publicly lost so much, had 7 family members die, including very publicly again his mother die from contracting COVID. And then you look at all of that, and then you watch these guys play with each other, and it seems very apparent that they don't like each other very much. And then it's not hard to like figure out why they don't like each other very much.
Yeah, and I mean, when you don't have that chemistry late in games, you can really, really see it. And they really struggled with that all season long. Not only getting stops late in games, but just the way that they move the ball on offense. It never really seems like it creates a quality shot. And it really cost them the other night in that New Orleans Pelicans game.
Yep.
As it has, many, many times this season. I think it just did the game before that too against the Miami Heat. So I mean, those chemistry woes and those issues really come out late in games, and that's been something that we've seen from Minnesota all season, and they don't have Karl Anthony Towns anyway, so I don't really see a lot of positive takeaways from this team. Maybe when he returns from that calf strain, they can start to figure it out a little bit more, but I don't know. It's hard to know where this team is going to be just because of how poor they've looked, and they really haven't shown any signs of coming together.
Yeah. I'm 100% there with you.
Well, we got 3 teams in the Western Conference that we haven't mentioned yet, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder at 15-20, the San Antonio Spurs at 12-23, and then the bottom of the Western Conference, obviously the Houston Rockets at 10-25. So, if you just want to give me a quick thought on all 3 of those teams, obviously we don't expect any of them to make it to the play-in or the playoffs, but they still have, interesting pieces on their team, as well as, potential to be in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, this is where I talk about being a real basketball junkie, but like I enjoy watching all 3 of those teams for different reasons.
Yeah.
And maybe different even besides like the the pieces, I enjoy watching the sets they put together. I enjoy watching Greg Popovich coach teams always. I enjoy watching Jeremy Sohan shoot one-handed free throws. And for what it's worth, he's made like 70. I want to say he's sitting at about 74% since he started doing that. And he was at 45% before that.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's working. They look crazy, but it's working.
They do.
But God, like, yeah, like if you saw somebody shooting like that in like a pickup run, you wouldn't pick them up. Yeah, but it's working. It's going in at a much better clip.
And you got to give him credit for trying something new, I think.
Oh yeah, because most people would just be like, I guess I just have to keep missing. I'm not doing
right.
That. Yeah. Because you look crazy. So shout out to him for being willing to try something new there. I'm enjoying watching Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell, especially Devin Vassell. I think he's had a nice season. You're kind of seeing a little bit of a leap from him.
Yeah.
A lot more of it in being able to function on the ball and score that I think will really pay off for him kind of down the road. So yeah, like I'm enjoying watching the Spurs. I mean, the Thunder have been the entire season. It's kind of been like, how many more games until, they say that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has to be mysteriously shut down for the season. Because I don't know, he wore his pregame outfit was too cool and he sprained his hamstring as a result somehow. Or you can't sprain a hamstring, tore his hamstring. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I love watching SGA play basketball. That's obviously a team that isn't really trying to compete, especially with the injury to Chet Holmgren before the season. It is what it is. They're in the Wemby sweepstakes. It'll be really, really fun to. It'd be really fun to watch Wemby and Chet play together with Josh Giddey and SGA. Would just be limbs everywhere. But watching the Thunder and seeing guys like Jalen Williams, who kind of has a beautiful like getting all the gaps game, been pretty impressed with them this year. And then the Houston Rockets. Ariane and I talk about them all the time, but they're like it almost feels like you're watching the world's best pickup basketball team when you watch the Houston Rockets. They have like the archetype of like every stereotype that you get in pickup basketball is somewhere on their roster, all the way down to Garrison Matthews, being like the white guy who just shoots threes and stands in the corner, and only shoots catch and shoots. I will say there's a clip of them against Dallas the other night that kind of encapsulates some of the issues that team is having, where Dallas ends up getting a dunk out of the play, and if you watch the play, you can see 3 separate occasions in one play, in one sequence defensively, where Jalen Green just gives up and decides to not play defense anymore or make a rotation or really move at all. You can't do that and then expect to win games. But on the other hand, I watch Jalen Green and I just find myself amazed at how skilled he is. Even besides the athleticism, I think the thing that impresses me with him the most is just the natural touch that he has at the rim. If you watched him finish with his left hand, you would think he was left-handed, and that's his weak hand. Mm-hmm. Like I really like you don't hear me say this often, but like knock on wood, provided he stays healthy, he looks like he'll be a 30-point a game scorer someday.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. I feel like Jalen Green has really started to show. He showed signs of it last year, but really this year he's starting to look like he's a guy that's going to compete for scoring titles pretty soon. I would assume. He's averaging 21.6 right now for a team high. But like you mentioned, it's that other stuff that he's going to need to continue to improve at. At times he doesn't even do them He's going to have to at least start trying to, because then, that's obviously the way to get better at it. That's a team that kind of has a lot of those guys that don't really seem focused on defense or team ball. But, a lot of that team is young anyway. So, they're still enjoyable to watch. It's just going to take, a few more years for that team to really start to round into something. I think they have a lot of pieces, though. Alperen Şengün. I'm really high on Jabari Smith. I feel like it is one of the few players on that team that really is focused on defense, as is another one of their rookies in Tari Eason. Those are two guys that have come in right away and have been ready to go on defense, which isn't something that we've seen from that team really in years. As for the other two teams that we talked about, the Thunder, it's not a great product. And like you mentioned, I'm sure they're going to shut down SGA at some point, but until then, he's going to continue to be one of the best guards in the whole league. Averaging like 30 points a game. I think he has to be in the All-Star game, even though, there's a ton of guards in the Western Conference. I just think he's been that good this season. I don't know where, I don't know where I would prefer to see Victor Wembanyama land. I kind of want to get your take on that. Out of those three teams, is there any one of them that you think would be the best fit for him, or that you would just like to see?
I think going to Houston would be the one I would. Well, it depends, right? I think if you want to see Victor succeed, you probably. Oh, I want to be charitable about how I say this, but I don't think Houston would be the spot for that.
Uh-huh.
There's only one ball.
Right.
Jabari Smith goes, it feels like, games without touching the ball in Houston.
Yeah.
They need like, that's a team that, like, I'm a big fan of Kevin Porter Jr.'s talent. He's not a distributor. Like, playing the role of distributor is not his natural thing. Like, that's not what he does. And that's not necessarily what Jalen Green does either. So bad shots go up on that team more often than you would want to see. I don't think that changes with Victor Wembanyama joining the roster. Alperen Şengün doesn't touch the ball for large stretches either, and I think they'd be better off running offense through him because of his skills as a distributor, and they just don't. And he just doesn't touch the ball. Yeah, I don't want to see Vic in Houston. Personally, I think him and Oklahoma City would be the best combination of everything, where you would get to see, him be allowed to kind of spread his wings. I think that'd also be his best chance at, playing on the team where they could immediately kind of be a relative worst to first story. And then you've also got, another guy there and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's fantastic with, a really high level passer in Josh Giddey. So that's where I would want to see him go. I'd love to get your take on that, though.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think out of those three teams, they're the one that would not only be the most attractive for him, but I think they're also the closest to competing. Even though they have been downright bad the last few years, they've actually been pretty competitive for being one of the worst teams in the league, for whatever that is worth. So I could see them taking a pretty big improvement with him, because you not only would you be getting the addition of Wemby, but you'd also have Holmgren coming in for his, essentially for his rookie season as well. So I think that would be the best spot for him to land, and probably the best fit for him. But I also do like a lot of what San Antonio and Houston are doing. I just think it's going to take them probably a little while longer. They seem like they're maybe a step or two behind the Thunder in terms of that rebuilding process. The Spurs really just kind of got going on it this year, if not last year, while the Thunder have been working on it for several years. I will say I agree with you about Şengün on the Rockets. I think if he had the ability to get the ball more at like the elbow with decisions, more in his hand and with players moving around him, I think it'd be a lot better. Instead, it seems like he just gets, post touches on the block, here and there. And he still does what he can with that. But it would be nice for them to kind of center the offense just a little bit more around him. He doesn't have to be, like Jokic, for the Rockets. But I would like to see a few more sets a game for him just because he's definitely shown the vision and the willingness to make those passes. And then going back to the Spurs from what you talked about earlier, Devin Vassell, I feel like has been phenomenal this year. He's really started to show, like you said, with the ball in his hands, he's doing that a lot more, attacking closeouts, putting the ball on the ground, getting to the basket. His finishing ability has been really impressive. So I think all three of those teams have positive things that you can look at, but it's obvious that, they're going to be drafting in the top 5 or 6. And one of those three teams is probably going to end up with Wembanyama, if it's not for, the Pistons or somebody out of the Eastern Conference. But is there any other team that you wanted to talk about in the Western Conference? We did talk about everybody, all 15 teams from the Pelicans and the Nuggets down to the Rockets. Is there anybody that you just kind of wanted to recap or touch on?
Nothing from me. If there's anything else, if anything else comes to mind, I'm sure I'll just yell it out of turn when we talk about all the East teams anyway. So
Right, yeah. And speaking of that, we're going to get to the Eastern Conference some point next week. Will be the two of us, and back with Danny, who was at the beginning of this episode with us. So we'll have the full show next week, I believe, at some point for the Eastern Conference. We'll do something similar where we talk about all 15 teams. Is there any of the Eastern Conference teams that you did want to point to right now and say anything? Obviously, the Celtics are leading it, followed by the Nets and the Bucks, who have been playing really well lately. And then, a few other teams as well, like Cleveland and Philly, are in that upper echelon as well. So any team out of the Eastern Conference that you wanted to mention?
as things stand right now, I know what the records say. As things stand right now, I think the Nets the best team in the East.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you think if the playoffs started this weekend, you would take the Nets over the Celtics in the series?
I would, which you know how big a fan I am of that roster. I didn't think those would be words I'd be saying either, but that's where we are at the moment. But you guys have to come back next week to hear us dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I don't blame you. The Nets have been playing better than anybody else in the last month. So, with their 10-game winning streak, Kevin Durant playing at an MVP level, Kyrie Irving has been playing phenomenal, as well as some of their key pieces. Their reserves have been playing a lot better this year compared to last season as well. So, I think it's good to see a team like Brooklyn be up in that mix after getting off to a slow start. I didn't really know how the season was going to go for them. It does look like they're going to be a contender. And I mean, just like last year, the Eastern Conference playoffs is shaping up to be really entertaining. The Cavaliers are another team that I'm really high on. And, I don't know if they're a finals contender, but they're a team that I know I wouldn't want to face in the playoffs. And, Philadelphia is a 5 seed right now, and they're another team that is pretty stacked and has been playing pretty well lately. So we'll dive deep into the Eastern Conference next week, and we'll get an opinion from Danny as well on who he thinks is going to come out of the Eastern Conference. But I think that's going to do it for us today. Before we did head out of here Tunde, I wanted to get your quick take on expectations for tomorrow night as a fellow Michigan Wolverine fan. How are you feeling about the playoff semifinal against TCU?
Oh man, listen. So Max Duggan reminds me a lot of Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford with like the slider slightly turned up. Lots of respect for TCU. I think there's some really good players over there. Quentin Johnston's had a phenomenal year. Hodges Tomlinson is a really good corner. So is the other one, Norton. I think this is going to be a very depressing game. I think JJ is going to throw the ball like 15 times. And Michigan's going to run for like 300 yards. And then this ends like 34-17 or something like that.
Oh, so you're feeling confident.
Oh, yeah. No, I think they're just going to run. I think this is going to end up looking a lot like a lot of the other games this year where TCU dies a slow death and Michigan runs for like 7 yards a carry.
Yeah, I would expect TCU to come out with a lot of energy, and I feel like they have the talent to keep up with, for maybe a half or so. But like you said, Michigan has been so good at adjusting at halftime, and they've been the best team in the country in the second half all season. So I would expect them to pull away. I don't expect a 17-point win. I've been talking to a lot of people, and they feel like Michigan's going to win by double digits. For some reason, I think TCU is going to be able to keep it a little bit closer. Maybe in that like 6 to 9 range. But I think it's a game that does come down to the fourth quarter. But I'm really excited. I think Michigan has a much better chance this year to win it all than they did last year. And this is something as a Michigan fan that we didn't. Speaking for myself, I didn't know if we were going to see, especially so quickly after the 2020 disaster. 2 years later, to be back to back Big Ten champions, to have a shot at the national championship. And obviously to take down Ohio State in back-to-back years has been a pretty impressive swing for them. But yeah, I can't wait for that game. I think it's going to be a great game. How about the other semifinal? Who are you taking between Georgia and Ohio State?
Oh man, that one will be fun. There's just lots of matchups to watch. Like if I could just get a camera that just follows Marvin Harrison Jr. and I'm assuming Keely Ringo will be matched up with him for a lot of the night. Georgia likes to play a lot of man coverage. If I could just get a camera that just focuses on that matchup, that'd be awesome. I say all this to say, like, I think that game could get bad. I really wouldn't be surprised if Georgia won it going away. But Ohio State, Ohio State absolutely has the personnel to throw the ball all over the yard and move the ball consistently against that Georgia defense. I'm gonna pick Georgia by around the same margin that I picked Michigan to beat TCU there, but I think we'll get 2 entertaining football games. I just wish we could stop having the CFP semis on New Year's Eve. It's not a good idea for anybody.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I'm glad at least that we have the first of the doubleheader this season, which I think is a little bit better. But yeah, I wish they would move it back to being on the first.
It's just much better that way. Yeah. But yes, I'm glad Michigan's got the early game this year too. I was watching that Cincinnati Bama game last year with so much anxiousness because I was just so eager to get that game started, and then once it got started, I was eager to get it over with. So,
yeah, well, it should be an exciting day. Hopefully, Michigan plays up to their potential because I really do feel like they have the team this year that can compete with Georgia. I wouldn't pick them to beat Georgia in the national championship, but I do think it's a possibility this year. So, hopefully, next time we talk, they're getting ready for that national championship game. But I think we're all set here. Make sure to follow Spoken Truth Podcast on Twitter. You can also check us out on Spotify and then right here on YouTube. We are going to be doing live shows starting up again next week where we're going to dive deep into the Eastern Conference. And then we're going to have more consistent shows after that, similar to what we did last season. Tunde, you want to tell them where they can follow you and stuff?
At King Tunde 25. If I'm on any social media platform, that's the handle.
Cool. And you can follow me on Twitter at Chaz_post23 and make sure to check back with us next week. Thanks for watching.